Well, hello, everybody. It is Sunday morning. That means it is time for chatting with Charles. And here today, I've got Matt from McCollim Music. How you doing, Matt?
What up?
Well, good morning to you. I know. It's a little bit. You're an hour ahead of me, though. So, uh, it's like time for us to go ahead and get started, I guess. But let's see who we've got in the chat.
All the regulars.
All the regulars here, and we start with Herb of Fireside Studios. Good morning, Herb.
Herb.
And Earl has been looking forward to this.
What up, Earl?
How you doing, buddy? And Music Therapy Labs, who follows us, he is here and saying top of the morning, everybody in the hemisphere, and good evening if you're somewhere else. So kind of like that. And Martin is with us. Hello there, Martin. And he goes on later, and I think somewhere he says that he is going to be kind of just listening in because he was making dinner and stuff like that. So,
oh yeah, it's a different time.
Hope everything all well in Austria.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here, buddy. And Zach Thong has made his way in, saying hello to you and I.
What up, Zach?
And of course, we've got Cushman NYC in the house.
Kush.
And Wayne McConnell has made his way in, which is top of the morning to y'all. And of course, everyone's favorite music in law, Ryan Hall.
There he is. The myth, the legend.
Yeah, he put out a video the other day. It's really good.
Yeah. I got it. I keep forgetting to go back and comment on it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I still need to go and comment on it as well. But I love watching Ryan play. There's just a joy. Yeah,
because he's so into it.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
makes you want to be into it.
Exactly. We got Ferd Burfel.
Ferd.
Yeah, how you doing there, Ferd? Appreciate you, buddy. Let's see. And now they're just talking. They've just been talking and talking here. All right. Let's see. Oh, Josh Tanberg is in the chat. He's going to be the guest over on the Ben Coombs channel later tonight.
Yeah.
So that's going to be worth a watch.
Man. Hot rods.
BC Rich 581 has made his way in. Hello there.
BC Rich. What up?
Wayne McConnell. Hello. Keith H. Keith H. You here? Yeah, he's here. And Mark's gas station.
What up? What up?
And Trev is up on the West Coast. He's still in bed. He's watching on the phone, but he's here with us. Appreciate that, buddy.
Trev.
And Patrick Trites.
What's up,
Hello there, Patrick Trites. Appreciate you being here, buddy. Okay, and of course, where was he? He moved on me. Hip Metalworks is here. So the West Coast is well represented.
Reverend Hip.
Reverend. All right, so there's definitely a conversation that's going on there between you and Hip.
We have a church.
There you go.
The Church of Absolute Ridiculousness.
Well, Matt, I want to thank you for coming on. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while.
Not a problem.
Really looking forward to it. And we got a couple more folks. Arf has made his way in. Hello there, Arf. I love his avatar. You know,
I hear the song when I see it every time.
Yep. You can't help, right? And then you hear the song in your head. Yep. And Blackjack Guitars made his way in as well.
Blackjack, what's up?
All right, Matt. So we got to start with the obligatory question. It's just there. It's part of the routine. It's if I didn't do it, Ben Coombs would cry.
Ben Coombs.
So, how do you start your guitar journey? How do you get pulled into all this?
So, to make a long story short, when I was a young kid, I found I don't even know what the heck they were called, but they're kind of like an accordion, but they're like hexagon shape, little tiny thing.
Okay, yeah, just like the Constantina.
Yeah. So I found that in my grandmother's basement because she used to watch us all the time while my parents worked. And I would just annoy the ever-living crap out of my siblings with that thing. What's up, Randy? And then my parents were heavy into the church. So my mom and dad both worked for the church on their off time from their real jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always at a church of some kind somewhere. And you know, the church has a band.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's gone. You can find me tinkering with all the instruments. Like the very first thing I ever played was like an actual instrument. It was like a freaking organ, and like I pressed a chord and just scared everybody, and they were like, "Stop doing that!" I was like, "Yes, I have to do that more."
So
So
I
as it
like that
progressed, my
attention.
mom
Hold on.
eventually she realized, well, he obviously like has this thing for music. So my sister was gonna take, my older sister took trumpet, my younger sister took piano, and then I was wanting to take guitar lessons. She was like, "Well, no, we're only gonna pay for one thing, and if you're gonna take lessons of anything, it'll be piano with your sister." Jimmy, what's up? And Mitch Heyman. So I ended up taking piano lessons probably from when I was 12 to around 15.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was saying earlier, I figured out quickly like the patterns on the piano. So they would give you a booklet and you do a page per week or whatever. I
Right.
would do all the pages in the book, come in that following week and be like, "Here's everything done." Show him I could play it all. And he'd be like, "Well, what the heck am I supposed to teach you then?" And I would point at the guitar and be like, "Show me how to play that."
I love it.
So he was like, "Here, this is how you play Metallica, you know, dun 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 dun." It's like learning the real easy Metallica riffs. And then eventually he said something to my mom, and my grandmother caught wind of it. So my grandmother went out and got me an acoustic guitar, and that's basically where it all tumbleweeds from there.
All right. So let's take that aside for a second. So the first guitar is an acoustic, and what kind of acoustic is it? And
Some
kind of
like
tell us about
super cheap nylon string, half scale. You know, nothing. To me, it was everything. I was like, "This is crazy." And then I started getting really into like, because my dad had a bunch of records, and so I would always be listening to The Doors, Chicago, Frampton, Eric Clapton, Pink Floyd, and like the electric guitar just was like, "Oh, how the hell, how are they doing that?" So that's where like most of that inspiration. I was like, "Well, I can play it, but it doesn't sound the same because it's an electric," and I had to explain that to my mother. I was like, "There's a whole other side to this." So her answer to that was, "Let's go get him a real acoustic guitar with brass strings." And I was like, "Well, that's cool and all, but it's not electric."
it.
But you know, I ended up getting a pickup from one of my friends, soldering it to a jack, and then duct taping it to my acoustic. And I would do like a Kurt Cobain type of thing.
I love this.
And that was like my first electric guitar was my acoustic.
I can just see the tape on this thing now.
Yeah. Surprisingly, didn't hurt it too bad. I still have that guitar. Must have been some cheap tape. John Deshane,
Yeah, Sean Hockey and
Sean
John
Hockey,
Joanne,
Charles Green,
Charles Green, and we, it's all the folks are here.
all the regulars.
Yeah,
Tom
and here
Surf
he
and
is.
Alien.
I can't. I don't know what it is. I can't not say I love this avatar.
Uh, the background always is like, "What is that?"
Yep, for sure.
But no, so after that, I was in a record store with a friend of my parents who was watching us at the time. He was a
Mhm.
bit older, from the church type of guy. He was real heavy into blues. So we went to a record store and he showed me like Johnston and BB King stuff and Sun House and like the old Mississippi style blues. And I fell in love with that stuff.
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
love
"Oh,
that
this
stuff.
is
Yeah.
crazy. Like, this is just awesome." So I went on a little journey to learn how they doing that. And that's when I started to play in open tunings a lot because that's all they did.
Hmm.
And like the slide guitar and all that stuff. So that's like kind of where I started getting the whole like, okay, this is how you play the guitar, which wasn't the greatest way to do it because once I wanted to play regular guitar, I had to unlearn all that stuff. Like, oh, hey, there's actually shapes. Oh shit.
Ah,
So
they ruined me.
So I would stick. I had this little wooden dowel. It was round, and I could shove it under the bridge of the acoustic to raise the action up enough to play
Mhm.
slide on the guitar without hitting the frets.
Nice.
And my parents found that so amusing that I would just on my own time figure all that out.
Hmm.
So eventually, when I was probably 17 or 16 or 17, I got a Squire, the combo pack, with the
Yeah.
little amp. And then I started learning like White Zombie, Nirvana, Foo Fighters. I mean, anything that was on the radio back then, I would sit there and try to emulate. Yeah, remember wasn't a whole lot of internet going on back then. You could find tabs, but it's a 50-50 if they were anywhere close to
If
being
they were
correct.
anywhere near close, but what they should have been.
Yeah. So I would just kind of take that with a grain of salt and then kind of go off on my own and figure it out.
So, so are you one of these guys where you can listen to it and figure it out relatively easily?
Yeah, because of piano, I can typically call out key if I hear it. Like, if there's a humming in the background,
Hmm.
I can get pretty damn close to what it is. Yeah. Like the other night, Ben had a humming going on, and it would oscillate between F into like a C.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Is it?" And I hit the thing on my guitar. And I was like, "Yeah, it's about an F, a little in the middle of F." And but I think that all comes from being in the church bands and stuff. There's a group of kids, and they all sing in the background.
Hmm.
And I think that's where I started to learn pitches and all that stuff. 'Cause you're bored. So
Yeah.
you try to sing an octave up to see if anybody would notice.
All right, who is it?
Yeah,
Who is it?
exactly. One of you is way out of key. And then for guitar, I don't know. It just kind of clicked when I picked it up, and I was like, okay, that it's kind of like a piano, but there's more going on. Like you have
See,
to really think about stuff.
that is really funny because guitar has been kind of the opposite of that for me. Like, I picked up as a kid. They would give, I was a woodwind player. I started with clarinet, bass clarinet, all the
Mhm.
saxophones, and they would just give me an instrument and a fingering chart and a book and say, "Go learn this," and I would. And I was able to do that for that. I was able to do that to some degree with piano, and and even a couple years ago when my son was taking violin lessons, I took lessons with him, and it was relatively easy for me to kind of get on and get started enough to play, right? But guitar has never been that experience for me. It's like it's just mystery, right? And so I'm very happy with where I am right now, but I want to go so much farther.
Yeah,
But
don't we all?
I'm not that person. I can't pick up the instrument and just figure it out. I get really excited because sometimes I do. Right, there's something for you just pick out and that chord and you just
Hmm.
right but it's not easy for me. So when I do, I get like really all kinds of excited.
A violin's not too far off, so that'd be more like an open tuning and backwards.
Hmm.
Because I played violin and cello for a long time. That kind of like open tuning thing, so it all just made sense to me. The thing I had a problem with was bowing. I suck at that.
That is, yeah. Making sure you're holding that bow in the
Yeah,
right way
kneading all
is a
the right
big challenge,
stuff and just dang, and it's
and
so
especially
tiny.
for if you're up bowing or double bowing, and
Yeah, it never clicked in my head. I was always holding it wrong, getting yelled at for that. Like, why do you hold it like that? I'm like, I don't know. My hands are too big. So they're like, well, try the cello. So I messed around on the cello for a bit. I really like the way cello sounds. I really suck at it, so I don't keep going. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
It's upside down. But that whole experience hanging out with those guys, that's where I ended up learning how to play double bass, which was, I guess, a whole nother world in itself.
Mhm.
But it was more like a guitar, so I was able to actually figure that one out a little bit easier. Is the whole fretless thing that kind of gets you. You got to really know what you're doing. So I started taking those little dot stickers,
Mhm.
and I would put them up and down the fret so I would know right around here's where that is, right around here's where that is.
Well, and that's the first thing they do with you with violin lessons, right? The first thing they do is they take this thin tape and they put it down
Hmm.
on your fretboard. It's like,
Yep. Follow
and,
the tape lines.
yep, just follow the tape lines. It'll be all right.
Then I try to do that with guitar, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it's there's so much more retail space going on there.
You'd have the entire thing covered in stickers, and then they just fall off. So you're like, I don't know anymore.
It's funny though. You get guitar. Sometimes, especially a lot of times, I'll pick up a guitar to fabric top, right, and you'll see where someone has either written on the fretboard or put stickers on the fretboard for all the different notes.
Yeah.
And
That was
it's
me.
hilarious. Check this out.
Oh wow.
Every fret.
So you'd have to be like looking over the dang thing.
Right, yeah, you'd have to look down like this, but they literally did it all the way down except for the last three.
Well, I mean, it just repeats itself. I don't think you don't have to really,
Oh, I know. They probably spent more time doing that than they ever did practicing.
That was a big moment for me when I realized it just repeats itself. There's Ryan.
It,
What up,
it,
Ryan?
it, it's one where, like, intellectually I know, but these haven't caught up with that.
Oh, and then you get into all the different. There's the G here, G there, G there. And you're like, oh man, come on.
PC Rich is saying double bass is horrific. It's
Yeah.
like Jack London's fretless.
Especially like a full size one. It's bigger than you. So I have to sit on a big high stool to actually play the dang thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh my.
what it does to your fingers is just not good. I learned really quick to use super glue on my fingertips. Try to,
All right,
not destroy them.
so you're going through all this, right? And we were talking in the green room about how you spent a lot of time in the church because
Mm.
with the parents traveling around and doing it. So so how do you go from being this church music guy to the Matt we know today?
Well, Dad said don't listen to the devil's music, and you always do the opposite of what your dad says. Well, no, my dad listened to a lot of different stuff. So growing up, when we were younger, he wasn't like super, super churchy. So he'd be like, listen to Jimi Hendrix and all that kind of stuff. And then, high school and middle school, you get introduced to like what all the other kids are listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And like I heard Pantera and Cannibal Corpse, and I was like, that is amazing. What is happening here? It just called to me.
So are they the groups that get really bring you in?
Yeah, it was mainly like Black Sabbath and Pantera type of stuff. And then from there, once you listen to the couple of those, you snowball into all the rest of those bands.
Yeah.
And then you start listening to the rock channel on the radio. And then for me, it was like, how crazy and heavy can you make something? Which,
Mhm. Yeah.
involves tuning really, really freaking low, learning all the diminished scales and how to make weird noises, not even necessarily playing anything, just harmonic noises,
Mhm.
which brings us into the baritones and why I play a lot of baritones. Just pushing the envelope as far as you can push it.
And that was the question we were going to go to, and you just went there. So
I knew it was
yeah,
coming.
yeah, you knew it was coming. So yeah. So what is with all the baritones?
So I like to play in a lot of different tunings. And you can't just tune a standard 25.5 or even a 26-inch guitar past B. I mean, C, it starts to already get kind of, unintonated and really hard to intonate. So you change the scale length, basically a bass guitar scale length, then
Mm-hmm.
you can put a little bit of fatter string on it, tune really low, and still be able to intonate it because you have the tension. And that's kind of where I would say, I don't even know, 7, 8 years ago, I just started buying baritones and never stopped.
So how many baritones are currently in the arsenal here?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.
Okay. And how many have come and gone?
Oh, I've given a lot away. I had a bunch of Dan Electros, and I was fighting those things for years before I realized it's not worth it. Just get something better. I had a Squire Bass 6 for a little while. A friend of mine really liked it, so I ended up trading him for a couple other guitars because I already had a bunch of them, all the baritones. I have a 26 inch, 27 inch, 28 inch, and 30 inch. So I've got them all pretty much covered.
So we know you as the baritone guy, but is that what you primarily play, the baritones?
Well, my writing is primarily done in a lot of baritone stuff, but I guess as I progress through, I'm kind of getting tired of all the work you have to do to make a baritone sound good.
Mm-hmm.
So I have started reverting back to standard tunings. I'm actually going to be setting up my Chevelle for drop C because that's one thing I don't have is a drop C guitar. I have everything else.
Thank
I
you.
do play a lot of bluesy, jazzy stuff, so I do play Jazz Master and I do play in standard tuning.
I can do it. I
I
really
do,
can.
I do. Well, for like the soundscapes for it was a bunch of mobile games and stuff like that. I would use a guitar with a ton of different effects, and
Mhm.
ended up really getting heavy into the effect pedals. So I met a friend who did retail on Amazon, and they would just start sending me random stuff. Those like Joyo pedals and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So I just had buckets upon buckets of all these crazy pedals, and I would go through and hook them all together and come up with these crazy soundscapes out of just that, which could be just like strumming one chord, but then you're pitch shifting it and going through like a reverse delay into another delay into a reverb into a looper and just letting it hang and linger.
So you just love that whole experimenting with sound to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, there's a synth sitting in front of me that runs into the same rig as the guitar, and I'll just sit there and make 8-bit noises sound crazy, or try to emulate like an orchestra sound, but through all of the different effects, basically. So if you
Hmm.
stripped all the effects away, you just basically have a saw wave or an 8-bit piano doing something. And to me, that was like, well, that's freaking cool. What else can I do? And then I transferred into the box. now, you know, Nowadays you have so many different plugins and all these different things and MIDI instruments and
Oh yeah, it just so much out there. It's like,
mm,
okay, yeah, I can do all that, but how?
yeah. Well, for me, it was easier to go in the box and just manipulate a few things instead of having like 20 pedals in a chain, trying to get all the chords not to interfere with each other.
Hmm.
3 pedal boards dancing and all this craziness.
Well, there was something really interesting because I think a lot of us that are some of us that are just kind of starting off on our guitar journeys, or folks that haven't played a baritone like you do, and so I've kind of always understood that the scale length is different. It's just kind of a longer scale length,
Mm,
but we were talking in the green room. There's some differences in how you can play it depending on how you're tuned. You were talking about.
right. So if you try to play a G chord in, let's say, an A standard tuning or an octave down E, it doesn't work out so well. It sounds muddy and weird. So you have to kind of break it up into sections where you play like half of the bottom and just kind of mute the top. Or you crank your EQ to make it super chimey. And then it gets a little shrill, but you can sort of make it out. Yeah, exactly, Ben. I was told you shouldn't play cowboy chords on a baritone. He's right. They will sound weird. But then it came to I wanted to play all these augmented things, and a baritone. So the frets are like bass frets, the size of how big they are.
Okay.
So trying to do anything extended is quite the reach. So I started to tune the last 3 strings in an augmented fashion so I could play them open and still have like a I would do like a major or minor sevens, kind of like a jazzy thing,
Hmm.
and then you can augment that into a diminished. So then it just instead of having to do all those diminished where you're reaching pretty far, it's all just open and I can bar it, which helps with harmonics big time. So you can literally play scary harmonic noises all the way up and down the fret because I'm tuning it augmented.
So how do you even begin to figure all that out? Because not only were you figuring that out, but you were talking about using the pitch pedals and
Hmm.
all these other things. You had to invest a lot of time into that.
Well, it started off with me and a friend discussing like, is heavy really that heavy? And I was like, I don't know. Why don't we try to make something so heavy that you can't, And it always we always thought it was the guitar tone making things heavy. Turns out, it really has most to do with the rhythm section. So it's all bass and the drums.
Hmm.
That's what makes something sound heavy. You get a halftime drum with like a standard time riff that's going dun 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 dun. It's gonna sound heavy. So we were like, well, do you even need a bass player then at this point? Well, not really. No, you just get a baritone, tune it way the freak down, and then all your rhythm sections are just the baritone, and then you drop another octave or two with a pitch shifter for, we call them the boom boom sections, where it's just an open palm mute and it's just boom. So you drop that another 12 seminodes. So I have riffs that I can play where it's me just playing like open 2 3, open 2 3, but I'm pitch shifting it up and down, up and down, up and down. Sevens. It's basically seven seminodes or a full octave, and you're already tuned to G, so,
Hmm.
so you get double the lowness. Then I personally love augmentation and the way that chords that shouldn't go together sound going together. Did the president use a baritone instead of a bass guitar? Good question. I don't know. Peaches, all of them peaches. I
They
mean,
have feelings.
technically, they are bass guitars. A lot of baritone players will argue and say, "No, no, it's a guitar." No, no, technically, it's a bass guitar. But you put the right pickup combination in it, and it sounds like a guitar.
But so earlier you're talking about the baritones because of the kind of dark
Mm-hmm.
sounds that you can get out of it. And so what drew you to that?
Ooh, so like I was saying before, it was like, how extreme can you make something? So we were playing seven strings and stuff like that. Um, when I was a young adult, Korn and Limp Bizkit and all those bands were making stink with seven-string guitars. Uh, I didn't even realize that they had already been around with like Steve Vai and all those guys.
Mhm.
And then when I found out they were playing Steve Vai guitar, I was like, oh, maybe I should go listen to that. It's two different freaking worlds. One of them's just chugging away, and the other one's playing sophisticated craziness.
Mhm.
So I was like, all right, I have to have a seven string. And that's kind of where it all started with the extended range thing. Was getting that first seven string and realizing, man, this sucks. This extra string's a pain in the butt. So I was like, all right, what if I add another string? Does it fix anything? So now I have eight strings. It doesn't fix anything.
No.
So that was my main draw to the baritone, was I could still play a six-string guitar but have even lower tuning than a seven string. Exactly. I'll tell you the trick to the seven strings. A lot of people do this and just don't talk about it. You tune the top six like a normal guitar, usually in a drop tuning, and then you repeat on the high strings the same two notes. So you
Uh-huh.
have that doubling going on, kind of like a 12 string. Or in my case, I would augment it. So if it's, say, like for me, it's usually C, it'll be C and C flat next to each other, which just gives you that eerie off tone.
Mhm.
Again, so you can bar it. Bonkers, what up, bud?
And good morning to you, Gary, too, as well.
Oh, I didn't see him. Oh, there
Yeah,
he is.
Gary was right before him.
There he is. What up, Getter?
Mhm.
I only recently started doing the super augmented stuff, probably in the last 5 years or so. Like you said, I had to sit there and kind of figure all that out. And it was like, you're going to play this chord, or I could, take it into the computer and chop it up and make it sound different. And I was like, well, that's just a ton of freaking work. So I started talking to a friend of mine. What's up, Ian? And he's like, bro, I play my last three strings in an open chord, and then I just tune the top three strings like a standard drop tuning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the light bulb went off. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. As Hip would say, cheater. It's a bit
Well,
of cheating.
that's a great thing about being sit down with another guy or a couple of guys, and you kind of you all add to it and you figure out stuff, right?
Yeah,
And because somebody else will always think of something you didn't.
exactly.
Yeah.
He was much further down the rabbit hole than I was, so he kind of just pulled me the rest of the way down. And his band still to this day is playing, and they play in such crazy low tunings that I was like, man, I have got to figure out how you're doing that because it sounds great. Turns out he's not playing a live amplifier half the time. A lot of those guys are using the Pod HDX and
Mm-hmm.
then they're just running them into the PAs because they want such a heavy bottom end that it's just gonna sound like doo doo going through a tube amp.
Yeah, you want to be able to manipulate that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have tube amps on stage, but it's just to push air behind them. They're not really, you can't really hear them. And then they don't even have a drummer. They played with a beat machine, one of those Leases. I don't know if anybody remembers those programmable beat machine.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Because the speed of which they was like, you know, no drummer wanted to play with them.
Just like running a machine gun.
Yeah. And they had so many different names over the years. I don't even remember what they called themselves last. I think it was like the Bunny Death Machine or something like that. They would wear full on like Easter Bunny outfits and playing seven strings to this beat machine. And there's just like this one guy in the background screaming. Who knows what the hell he even ever said? But, but for me, I was like, that's awesome. Like, what is this? This is absolutely insanity. So that he was like, okay, he kind of described to me how he was running his equipment. And then I was like, well, that's not too far off from what I'm doing. I could probably do that because I started
Mhm.
off using a lot of pod stuff. And then eventually, as you got older and you could afford, amplifiers, then you start messing with all the amplifiers. But I noticed I couldn't get the clarity through the amplifier that I was getting through the digital. So I went back to digital. Now I'm running a Cortex.
Mm.
That way I can manipulate the actual amplifier itself. You only have bass, treble, volume typically. Well, that bass knob I need to be able to take more bass out. So that brought me into my whole amplifier journey of, swapping speakers. Some speakers are more low end, sensitive than others, and
Mhm.
I guess that's when I became a full on guitar nerd.
So, are you completely digital now, or are you using both?
I play live amps when I'm just in here doing my thing, but if sometimes I'll mic it up depending on if I'm getting a certain sound out of it that I can't emulate.
Mm-hmm.
But I've found with the leap in technology these days, I can pretty much just stay all digital, and most people wouldn't be any the wiser.
And that's a good way to transition because you pretty much have a full studio going on there.
Hmm. Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff. But that's like for me the main thing. I was never really trying to write my own stuff or produce my own stuff or anything like that. I worked with a guy who was a ASC certified or AC. I forget what the heck that school is called in Florida. He was uh, he was trained on SSLs and all that stuff. So he had a studio around the corner from where we lived.
Mm-hmm.
He played double bass. He and I started a band called Betty Had the Boop, which was like polka punk rock.
I love it.
And I had an actual full on accordion at that time. So I was just goofing around one day. I was like, we should start because we were recording hip hop and a bunch of other stuff, like as a profession.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of goofing around one day because he was playing his upright, and I started playing along, and he was like, "This is actually kind of cool." And I was like, "Well, I have these two songs," and then it just spiraled from there. Betty Had to Boop still has a Spotify page and all that stuff.
So you heard it here, folks. If you want to hear Matt play some accordion, you go check out Betty Had a Boop.
Betty Had to Boop. I'm playing the guitar, singing, accordion, piano, all the folk instruments. Like we had it's a armadillo shell, but it's a mandolin.
Uh-huh.
I think that was really cool. I didn't know how to play any of that stuff. I was just kind of making it up as I went along.
Well, that's the fun of it, right? You know.
Yeah. And then like I would stay up overnight at the studio and force myself to play stand up. And then he would come in, hear what I was doing, and be like, you can do that this, and show me the easier way. And then he would just record it because he was so much better than I was.
Uh-huh.
There's videos somewhere on YouTube you can find live shows of us. He is headbanging, spinning that thing around like real rockabilly.
Nice.
I was playing semi hollow art stars back then through what the heck was that thing? A rolling. It was one of those rolling chorus with a Proco rat, and that that was my sound. And everybody was like, "Why would you do that? It's just gonna feedback." I was like, "Well,
That's the point.
that's what all the foam's for." Got foam under the bridge, foam under the nut. They
Well,
didn't have the little fret wraps like we do nowadays.
mhm.
Now I'm all
Well,
about the fret wraps.
and not only did you do that, but you for a while you played in a series of metal bands, right?
Yeah, I would play piano and scream and sing, and then that would transition into just being the singer because we would play the backing track, so I wouldn't have to sit there because I had a problem of getting a little too inebriated. So playing the piano didn't really work out so great all the time. So they just put everything onto a backing track, and we would make the mix so it was hard left, a click track, hard right, everything else, and then feed the click track to the drummer, and we just play to the backing track with the live guitar and singing and all that stuff over it.
And then Matt being whatever condition Matt was in.
Yeah, I could always sing. That's not a problem. I mean, half the time you're just going raw, 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 raw. So it didn't really matter if I was on or not.
Hmm.
But eventually, we started taking it really serious. So they were like, "We're not gonna put your we're not gonna put your piano tracks on the backing track. You actually have to play them now." I'm like, "Oh shit." I was like, "Well, you don't have to do all the singing now. You only, they got a screamer that's dedicated to just that. So me and the guitar player would sing harmonies in the background."
Right.
So then I was like, "All right, compromise." And start taking it a bit more serious, not drinking so much, and playing the piano. And then when that all fell apart, then I started doing my own thing, which would just be like two or three guys, and I'd be playing guitar with somebody else, and then the other guy would just be a drummer.
Hmm.
We didn't really need a bass player because we're tuned so ridiculously low.
Right.
I would just run an A/B switch with a full octave pitch shifter to a bass cab, and that's the bass guitar. So I would just stick to the rhythm stuff. Yeah, I am a professional screamer. I also do screaming lessons if anybody wants to learn how to do death metal. I can teach you. It's not hard.
Talent list grows.
I went head first, man. Like for me, like hanging out with people in my area they were all doing drugs and stupid shit. So I got into trouble a few times and had to go and sit behind bars. And that for me, I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just gonna sit home and pluck on my guitars and stay out of trouble.
There you go.
So,
That'll
yeah,
do it.
man. Like I got all the Mel Bay books and all that stuff. Just sat in my room. Girlfriend was pissed because I never wanted to go anywhere. How come you never want to go out? Well, chances are we're going to run into so and so and so and so, and that's going to turn into doing something stupid. And I like my freedom. It's much nicer. So yeah, when you kind of just shut the world off and go straight into work, come home, play guitar, sleep, work, come home, play. I'm still to this day doing it.
There you go.
A
Well,
decade later.
good way to stay out of trouble, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I also started getting like people hitting me up. Friends of mine did they
So
make
Ian
mobile
saying he's
games.
been there.
Yeah,
He gets it.
a lot of people have. It's pretty common.
It is. We've all had those. I think we've all had those moments in our life where you make a decision and it's like, oh, It wasn't good.
Yeah. I don't like the way this turned out. But I started getting deep into like the DAW thing. Friends of mine were making mobile games. That's how they were making money.
Hmm.
Those cheap little, because cell phones became a big thing,
Right.
and they knew that I could just, you know, conjure up some nonsense. So they would start sharing me to other people to the point where I started making soundtracks for game, what do you call them? Game studios in like Korea and China,
Hmm.
which interesting. Let's just say not safe for work type of stuff. Is that, it's like, all right, that's kind of a fun avenue to make some money, but over time I was like, man, this is just not for me, and I don't want my name attached to any of this nonsense. And so I kind of just went the hip hop beat route because I could sell, like NFT type style stuff. So I don't know if anybody knows what Beat Club is, but it's what the heck's his name? Timberland. He has this whole thing where you can pay a monthly fee basically, and
Uh-huh.
that gives you access to his website that you can upload samples, beats, anything you're really doing, and people can buy them in like packs.
Oh, pretty cool.
So I did that for a little while, and I started to realize that I'm an old white guy. I don't know how to keep up with all the hip hop stuff. I don't really listen to it. So I'm like not making any money at a certain point. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna jump out of this field and do my own thing, which is what led me to jumping back into the YouTube world.
There you
And
go.
a lot of people's channels I've been there just watching, like Ben and all them. I just never talk in the chat or anything like that.
Yeah, just kind of lurk in the
Yeah, I was always
background.
lurking. RJ Ronquillo and all them.
Hmm.
And then I would say probably last year I was like, I got some balls, I guess, and just started talking to people. Became a chatosphere person.
Well, we're glad you did because you've been a real fun guy to get to know.
I appreciate it. You guys have all been awesome. Very open community. And I've been in a bunch of communities on YouTube. Most of those communities suck. It's like a freaking, well, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you.
Yeah,
Look at what
it's
I
it's
can do. I'm like, good grief, people. That's not what it's about.
yeah. I say it. I've said it time and time again. That the little corner of the guitar community that we're in is just solid, filled with people that are unbelievably nice and will take the shirt off their back to help you get
Oh,
where
yeah.
you're trying to go. I mean, you look at Ben, you look at Ryan, you look at all these guys that we're sitting talking back and forth that are in our chat today. It's like it's these folks will all reach out and help each other. Charles
Oh,
Green,
yeah.
John Justin's been a lot of fun to get to know.
John
And
Shane's
it's just
awesome.
but it is that support that you get from all these folks in the community. I think Blackjack Guitar is maybe one of the first people that I got to know in the chats, right? And so we're always going back and forth in Cushman NYC, and so it's just a lot of fun, and knowing that you can have that support and do the things that you want to do, and it's nice here. It's like no one's trying to I'm better than you and that kind of thing you were talking about.
Except for Ryan, apparently.
What does it mean?
uh, he's like, none of y'all play Trans Trim? I'm
Yeah.
dead.
Herb's been another great guy as well. But that's the thing. The people that are in this part of this community just really care about it and keep that stuff going.
Yeah, I was circulating for a while, and then I started to hear other channel names, McKnight and all those guys, and I would notice all those same people were in these chats. I was like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
you're awesome too, John.
Yeah.
I should still make you uncomfortable. But I don't know. I wasn't drawn to the whole chat thing right away. I guess because I'm just not super vocal about things a lot of the time.
Hmm.
So once I started talking in the chat, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, just say hi, I guess.
Yeah. That was the thing too, because early on in YouTube for me, I would just sit there and watch, and
Mhm.
and I might ask a question here or there, and at the very most, you'd get a "Hey."
Yeah.
It was about it, right? And but yeah, I think that kind of takes some time if you're more of an introverted person.
Yeah, but then once you become like a known part of the community, everybody's like, you'll just see your tag, tag, tag. Hey, hey. I'm like, okay, got to say hi to all these people. These these are our people. Then like OU812 crew, I was like fascinated by that at first. Like, how the heck are they doing that?
Mhm.
Like, I've tried so many different methods, and then
Yeah, 'cause, yeah. Before they did it, everyone was kind of like, "It can't be done."
it can be, but it's such a delay that you'd have to be listening to what's coming out of your DAW
Hmm.
versus what's going on in the internet, so you wouldn't be able to talk to anybody.
Right.
And that's kind of shitty because you forget somebody's talking to you, you talk back, but they can't hear you because you got to switch everything over. And then that's when I started figuring out, oh, the Roadcaster and those streaming mixers doesn't have to be a Roadcaster. There's other ones out there.
Hmm.
And I've tried a few of them, but like everybody always says, Ryan should probably be sponsored by Rode because he's
Oh,
turned a lot
for
of
sure.
people onto it. I, I went through 3 different roads before I was like, all right, we're just gonna get the Pro because I want stereo.
Yeah. Well, and that was thing. It was Ryan that group. Ryan and his crew has sold more Roadcasters and yeah, like,
It's hilarious. People ask too, like, "Oh, so where'd you get that idea from?" I'm like, to be honest with you, there's this group called OU812. You should check them out. They all do it. The latency thing kind of just solved itself. I don't know. I don't think any of us can explain it. It's just something the Roadcaster does. A lot of the backing tracks and the way you got to pump things through.
well,
It
that's the
just,
thing. They're pumping everything. If my understanding is correct, they're pumping everything through the Roadcaster,
mm-hmm.
so it keeps it synced up.
Shit. I think Ryan even puts his backing tracks on the pads because you can load a whole song onto the pad and just press it on the pad.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
I knew you
Oh yeah.
could load sounds and stuff. I didn't realize you could load the whole.
Yeah, I have full songs on here. Or I'll do you can Bluetooth your phone to it
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and
That's
do it
that's
that
I
way.
think the option that a lot of people use for that.
Right. Well, but that's going to be dependent on your internet connection if that works out for you or not. So
You can.
now
There's a
I'm
spot on the
starting.
back to hard plug in your cell phone too, isn't it?
You can put an SD drive in the back,
Mhm.
and then you can have a whole, SD card. Like yeah, like Ryan said, he uses SD storage. Yeah, John uses the pads too. See,
Mhm.
it makes it so much easier because I've noticed if I try to play a backing track that maybe is in my music library on my phone,
Mhm.
there's no way to stop it from going to the next track or repeating itself.
Right.
So you have to be ready to pause. So with the pads on the Roadcaster, it'll just stop. Or you can have it set up to loop depending on how you set it up. But most people are just gonna have it stop. So which that takes a whole lot of worry and all the other nonsense out of it. So you can just sit back and relax and play the guitar.
Excellent.
But me personally, I would just love to watch people play guitar. That's always been something like everybody
It
does
it,
something different.
it definitely is. There's satisfaction, and it makes the one thing it makes me do is makes me want to pick mine up. Actually,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
exactly.
where I want. I want to get there,
Oh,
and
whenever they're
especially when you
jamming,
watch.
I'm
You
sitting there
know,
jamming along.
yeah, oh yeah. Well, when you watch folks that have, the OU812 crew, you know, these guys were already great players,
Hmm.
and you can hear the difference in their playing from when they started to now. So they're already starting out as great players. They're sounding even better now, and then you see other people that have come onto their channel to play with them develop over time,
Hmm.
and it just makes you want to be part of that to some degree.
I show up every now and again. I don't see myself as that. Like, you could put me in A minor all day and I could figure that out. But they jump keys around. I'm like, oh man, I don't know any of those keys, man. I'm always in the background in mute trying to figure it out before the camera gets swapped to me. I'm like, oh god. But like watching them play and what they do with their hands and stuff, I'll start to emulate things and then figure it out for myself and be like, oh, okay, I see what's going on there. Like the other night, I was talking to John DeShane. I was like, "How the hell do you do that?" And he like showed me 2 or 3 things. I'm just like, "Oh, okay, I get it now. Why didn't I think of that before?"
Well, and that is the thing, and that's the thing. With this community, you can reach out like that and ask those questions, and somebody will help you. You know.
Ooh, Ryan's got some juicy details there.
Oh, hold on now. So he has an announcement today that will allow more community involvement with the channel. So make sure you tune in.
Sweet.
And before we get too far into this and we run out of time, make sure that you go and you check out the other Sunday channel. I don't see Last doesn't appear to have a show up right now, but that could change in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah. What's up,
But
Steve?
so if he does, go ahead and make sure you go over and check him out. Make sure you go over and check out the OU812 crew today. It's always a good time over there on a Sunday. And make sure you check out Ben Coombs, who's going to have Josh Tanberg on, and
Josh will be
find
on
out all about guitars and cars. And
do you see John DeShane's comment? 90% of it is all smoke and mirrors.
where is that? Oh, there
That's
it is.
right below that one.
Yeah, it's all smoking.
He's not kidding.
Well, then if that's the case, I'm not minding being fooled.
I mean, I'm remembering 2 different pitch shifters into all kinds of effect. Half the things you think I'm doing probably aren't as complicated as they probably sound.
Morning, Steve.
There he is.
But it's just been watching, all of that grow and sit there. It's just been a lot of fun.
Plus, you get to be involved. You can ask them to do something, and if they know it, they'll do it. And then you're like, oh, that's cool. And for me, it's when they start playing blocks of Alice in Chains, I'm like, hell yes. This is great.
They do tend to perk up a little bit when they get an Alice in Chains song, don't they?
They're great at it. And I'm like, oh, man, I remember those songs. Holy crap, that's been a long time. Just the nostalgia thing, And then, I didn't know much about Van Halen stuff, which is weird because most metal kids play through EVH amps and stuff like that. You would think we'd have some clue, right?
Mm-hmm,
nope, not a clue. Watching OU812 is where I've been learning all the Van Halen stuff. And then you jump over to Tony's channel and you get more of the lore side of things,
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, dang, I don't know how I missed out on all this. I guess it's just nobody in my circles ever listened to that stuff. So now I'm finding myself, in my 40s. Now I'm listening to that stuff.
Right. Well, and it's funny how you're, as you get older, how you're rediscovering stuff.
Right.
Right. Things you haven't thought about in years. And you hit it and oh, why did I stop listening to this?
Yeah, all that Alice in Chains stuff. I'm like, dang, what the heck did I do? Now it's all back on, downloaded on my Spotify. Listening to it daily. Yeah. Ben will start playing some stuff, and I'll be like, dang, I know that. What is that? Then you have to go back and look it up. That, to me, that's the big reward for me, is just, it keeps everything moving in your head. And I'm always like, I have no inspiration. And then I'm like, well, we can just go listen to some old, something older that I'm not listening to currently, and it re-sparks that flame,
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm usually listening to such heavy nonsense that when I jump back to something that has more of a melodic tone to it, I'm like, oh, this is oh, wait, I know how to do that.
Well, and there's always that, that idea of returning to something that's a little simpler.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It just opens up. I don't know what it is, but because we try to get too complicated and too, fancy and that, but when you take it back to its bare bones, it's where, then you start to get creative again.
I yell at myself constantly. I'm like, quit trying to make it so complicated. Why am I doing this to myself?
John Jusane says he loves some of the old classic tunes Ben pulls out sometimes.
Yeah, it's great. Oh, I forget about half those bands. I'm like, oh man, Rammstein, not so much. I mean, they're weird. They're pretty weird.
But I thought weird was your thing.
Not that weird. That's a different kind of weird.
So there's a line.
There's a line. Yeah. That they I'm not big into like the Manson scene or any of that like uh, shock rock stuff. I'm more into like theatrical, scary, you feel the end of the world coming type of shit. What was the band? Meshuggah, basically.
Hmm.
Meshuggah was like one of the big gateways. People are like, "Oh, there's this band, there's that band." I'm like, "None of this is heavy. Go listen to Meshuggah. They've been heavy since the '80s." And then, like that's kind of where like a lot of people my age started their inspiration and why we all pick the way we do. Crazy triplet pickings and all these off time things. uh, Ramstein is more simplified, but it's more of like what he talks about. It's just kind of like, it's kind of,
More the topical, huh?
I don't know. That's kind of risky.
Well,
uh,
so Matt, you're on an interesting place in your journey, right? I mean, because now you've kind of come back to the whole YouTube scene
mhm.
more than before, so it kind of stimulates that question of where do you want to go?
Well, I do have a channel that eventually, when my other side gets his stuff worked out, he's got a roadcaster now. So
Hmm.
we're gonna teach him how to do it. We're gonna start doing. Then it's gonna be trying to find a slot where nobody else is playing, which is gonna be a real pain in the butt. Doing like a live stream where Ryan's channel does all of the like lead stuff.
Right.
Well, kind of same formula, just it'll be a bare drum track, and we'll do rhythm guitar stuff for like the middle kid.
That's pretty
I've
cool.
had some requests for it. Exactly, another roadcaster sale. And I showed him your channel, and he was like, "I don't know how they're." I'm like, "I can tell you exactly how they're doing that. Get your wallet out. Hit up our friend over at Sweetwater. He's gonna
That's
get you one." But like I was saying, most of these channels I'm watching nowadays, they all just kind of noodle over backing tracks,
Hmm.
and I like that. It's cool and all. I don't want to repeat that though. I don't want to be the same, thing.
Right.
So a couple of people that we talked to in the circles were like, "Well, what if there was just like a riff channel?" And so I've heard that comment a few times, and I was like, "Well, I don't know if anybody else that's doing that. So maybe because that's what we do. We just sit around and write riffs."
Hmm.
So we're probably, hopefully, coming into this new year, we'll have. I have two different channels, but I think I'm just going to keep everything on this channel because everybody just knows this channel already, the McCollim Music channel. And so it'll probably just be one of those like once or twice a week type of thing if I can get him situated. And then I have other friends that said they can join in. One of them's like a punk rock guy. What's up, R2?
He kind of weaseled his way in here at the last minute. How you
Been
doing,
seeing a
Arthur?
bit of him this last week. He's been showing up all over the place. Everybody's been missing your ass. Where you been?
Yeah, well, he's been hiding. Glad you're here, R2.
So it's going to be a trial by fire type of deal, I think. See if we can get
So are
anything
you?
over there.
So you're thinking about doing the both things, doing riffs and rhythm?
It'll just be like riffs and rhythm, yeah. I mean, most of the metal stuff nowadays, you're kind of just teetering in between a rhythm and a lead, or playing
Hmm.
both kind of at the same time. So, but it'd also give us a chance to show off, like, all right, this is F tuning, this is G tuning, this is drop E tuning. Like,
Hmm.
and you can get to see like what different tunings will sound like and all that stuff.
So with all the different tunings that you're using, right? Are you are you constantly tuning guitars, or do you have guitars dedicated to certain tunings?
The reason I own 20 plus guitars is because they're all dedicated to something. I'm not
Hmm.
one of those people who wants to keep restringing and reintonating. And once you intonate something in that low of a tuning, it just needs to stay that way.
Don't mess with it.
You're going to spend another 2 days trying to intonate it again, so you might as well just leave it alone. Yes, drop E. Typically on H string, it's a drop E because it's tuned standard, so you have a B and an F flat. You just drop the F flat to a drop tuning, and that's drop E. which is
Nice.
like the most common tuning nowadays in the modern metal. And it sounds super digital and processed, and I'm just like, me. Like Ben said earlier, I'm not really a huge fan of this century's music. I always find myself going backwards.
Yeah, I think you when you hit that kind of sweet spot between from your teenage years to your mid-20s, I think that's kind of like the stuff you tend to hold on to and listen to the most.
Hmm.
You may
Of
be
course.
open to other things, but it's still always going to be kind of like be your go-to.
Oh, I still listen to the same bands I did when I was in middle school, which was it's very different from because I'm probably one of the younger guys. Like we were listening to like I said, White Zombie and Deftones and Alice in Chains and stuff like that. And a couple of the other bands would have been like getting into the oldies, you know. And now you hear like Nirvana on the oldie channel. I'm like, holy crap!
Yeah, that is something like when you start to hear stuff that was when you're in your mid-20s on the
Yeah,
oldies. Like, hold on, wait a minute, I'm not ready for that.
yeah. I saw a meme today that made me think. It's like, did you know the songs from the '80s would be the same age as the songs from the 2000s now?
Hmm.
Like, wait a minute, what? Make sense of that. Like, oh, because they're that old. Holy shit. And I just see like nowadays everything kind of just repeats itself now. So I listen to two bands, and a friend of mine are really into these bands. Like, oh, this is great, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, well, isn't this just the same band that you just showed me? Oh no, this is a different band. They play in this. I'm like, but it sounds exact. What?
It all sounds the same.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you there was a difference. He's like, oh, this guy's far more melodic than this. I'm like, I do not hear any
I don't hear
melodicness.
the difference.
Well, again, it's pushing the envelope on how heavy you can make stuff. One of the main bands I listen to nowadays is called Humanity's Last Breath. There's no amplifiers. There's no bass player. He plays in drop E augmented, and he plays the guitar upside down, meaning his top strings are on the bottom. Like it's weird.
Say that again.
He's playing a baritone with his his thick strings are on the
The heavy
bottom.
strings on the bottom.
Yeah, yeah. Because that's when he was a kid. He was a left-handed kid. He couldn't figure it out, so he picked up a guitar and just started playing it upside down because he didn't have
Hmm.
left, and he just stuck that way.
Okay, I can see that now. If that's the way you've picked it up from the beginning,
Yeah.
then okay.
And his dad's like a big producer out in I think he's from Sweden or yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like Sweden. Of course, the Swedish guys are making the craziest metal, obviously. Inverted tuning, correct? And he plays in like I noticed his tuning. What drew me to that band was the tuning he uses is very similar to the stuff I do. So I was like, oh, I'm not the only one who does this. And then I found this whole group of people that are doing it,
Hmm.
primarily overseas. Not a whole lot of people in America. They're doing it now because that band got popular.
Right. Yeah. If the band gets popular, then everybody wants to do it. Right.
Yeah, now he has signature models, and he's one of those nail the mix guys. He's like he
Hmm.
was a producer first because his dad's a producer. So he's teaching people all those tricks on how to make those guitars sound the way he does, and so now there's actually a market for it. So I'm thinking, if I start maybe doing stuff on YouTube like that, I might get a little bit of a crowd to pile in to see all the weird tunings. Hell yeah, Steve. That's the new 8-string standard tuning, just so you know. I think I know like one person who plays it in actual F. Not many. I think Animals as Leaders even plays it in drop E. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but that's crazy.
No, but that is one I might have to go ahead and look up.
There's no singing in that band. It's all just instrumental. It's two 8-string guitars and a drummer, and it is just mind bending.
Wow.
He plays in like these weird polyrhythms where he's using his thumb, kind of like a bass thump, but
Hmm.
he can stroke up and down with that, and he does this whole like beautiful melodicness going on. they can get a little heavy, but it's nowhere near as heavy as like trust me when I say it's not that heavy. But it's an interesting combination to see. He'll play the bass and the guitar parts kind of at the same time,
Hmm.
and I think for people in my genre and area, that was one of the big turnaround moments for everybody. They're like, okay, we all realize we suck. Like this guy's out here just killing it. Holy crap! That would be Thompson Obasi, and he's been like the 8 string guy ever since. Yep.
Right? Just to
Exactly.
keep up, just as you were saying it too. It was cool.
Oh, it gets they're getting around. Uh, I heard a rumor that there's going to be another project with a possible singer, which would be interesting because knowing him, he's not going to want raw screaming. He's going to want like melodic, jazzy singing.
Hmm.
So that should be an interesting combination. Looking forward to that. But for me, I'm like, all right, now that's a little too extreme for my taste. I don't know how to play those kinds of things.
Well, it's maybe it's your next challenge.
I'm good. I've learned some of his techniques. I'm good. I don't know how he does that.
Kush
The
band
sword,
fight.
yeah, I like the
What about
sword.
the band, the sword? Yeah.
Of course, they're not nearly as you know crazy as the other bands, but they're still very nice, melodic, cool riffs. Rick Potato, yeah, he has a whole interview with them.
Hmm.
Him and John Petrucci and Devin Townsend. That's the three of them. That's a really good interview if you've not seen them.
Ah, that's something to check out.
Yes, Animals Leaders came out because everyone was sounding like Meshuggah. Exactly. Exactly. Even I am guilty of sounding like Meshuggah.
Well, you get into the genre, you follow the trends of the genre.
Exactly. You know, when you started off playing dun 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 dun, you're like, yeah, that's heavy, and then you
That's awesome.
realize there's other bands out there going da 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 da. You're like, okay.
Hold on now.
Now I gotta learn how to pick even faster. Jesus Christ. And like sweep picking for me, I was like, oh man, whoever does that until you learn how to do it. Now you can't stop doing it. You try like don't do that. Play them individually if you can. It just sounds like mush half the time. So that's why I go back to a standard tuning. I could suss it all out there.
Yeah. Are you currently exploring a whole lot more in the standard tuning as we speak?
Well, I'm trying to write more in standard tuning, more like indie style rock, because that was like my main, like Betty Had to Boop and all that stuff was all indie style.
Hmm.
So I took a hard right for a long time. So now we're circling back to that. You know, I primarily play in open G and play like bluesy stuff, and then I figured out that it's really hard to play like OU 812 style when you're just coming off, improvising. It's incredibly hard to do in open tuning. So you got to go back to a standard tuning, and you can move keys around a bit easier in
Hmm.
standard tuning, whereas you're dedicated to whatever the open tuning is. Appreciate it, Kush.
I certainly do.
But like, you could do cool stuff in open tunings. Like, so there's a lot of fun to be had there, especially with a fuzz pedal and like a little 112 style amp. You can really get some cool sounds, and you start to sound like all those guys you were listening to growing up.
Hmm.
So you find yourself emulating old bluesy guys. And my next big thing, I want to get a resonator, a steel resonator, like a National.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get one of those myself.
Very percussive instrument, but like that's what they were just slapping those things. So you didn't have a drummer or a bass player. You would They would just open tune it, and then they would slap their thumbs against the top, the low E, and that was your drummer and your bass player Plus, the you could be outside and it wouldn't really hurt the guitar because it's completely made out of metal.
Yes, it's made of metal. But then you spend all day in the summer sun burning your hand on it.
I was wondering too, like, did they do that on purpose, or was that just like what they could get? And like, I never understood. And then you watch like an interview with Sunhouse, and he was talking about how he had all these different guitars, but only that one sounded the way it did. So he played just that one. It was a National
Mm-hmm.
resonator, and like he's like, I wouldn't play anything else after he played that. And you listen to the recordings of him playing it, it is very very
But
shrill and stringy and
it's that thing though. Once you find that thing you love, and you really kind of just you meld with it. It's hard to let it go.
yeah, exactly.
Well, Matt, I want to thank you for coming on,
I appreciate it.
and this has been a lot of fun. We're gonna have to do it again for sure.
There's plenty more we could talk about, I'm sure.
And so, uh, you know, everybody, make sure you, like I said, make sure you go ahead and check out OU812 later. They'll have a great show. Ben and Josh will be on later this evening. And Gretch, I want to say hello to Gretch Zeppelin. How you doing there,
What
buddy?
up?
Can you sneak in? And thank you for everyone saying what a great hang it's been. Matt, we're going to go ahead and let these folks go ahead, head out, and
I'll see y'all in the chat.
we'll chat a little bit here. All right, so let me go ahead and do that.